right, welcome back to another episode of Structured Insights. Today, we've got some amazing guests and a topic that if A and I is in your vocabulary, it will be pertinent to you. So once again, we have Bill Tracy from Structured. Hey, Bill, welcome back.
Hey, everybody.
And we also have Aaron McAllister, who is the Principal Solutions Architect at Cloudflare. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, so guys, again, AI is the topic of the day, I think, in pretty much every conversation that we have in our industry these days. This episode, we're really going to focus on talking AI security, and we're not going to just talk about is AI risky or is it challenging. I think everybody kind of gets that already. What we're really going to talk about is where the security is breaking, what are the controls that are out there, what team should be, what should they be thinking about right now versus maybe pretending that they're doing. And also, I think the big thing that I just saw an article the other day about was budget, right? Like, I think it is there's this a thought that, like, there's an unlimited amount of money to be able to solve all these things. And obviously, as you guys know, that's not always true, right?
Absolutely. I do have to start it off by saying, Nick, I had a 2.5-hour meeting with a partner 2 days ago, and we did not mention AI one time. And
Wow.
I at the end of it, I realized it, and I said, I don't know if that's frightening or refreshing, but I'm going to go with refreshing for now.
All right. Well, I think, yeah, it's funny. Even it's moved into the, obviously outside of just the IT and the security world, it's I feel like it's in everyday life. And there was a couple, I talked to somebody this week about a conference they were in, and they were literally talking about, they're like, is AI coming? I'm like, AI's here. Like, it's not, it's already here. It's in every tool. It's in our apps. It's everywhere. So let's talk about, like, where do you think today, let's just frame it up, where does AI break the basic security assumptions when it comes to IT?
I guess I'll kick it off, Aaron. I mean, I think one of the biggest areas that we're seeing AI affect, I guess, traditional security is the fact that data security and data posture has always been a challenge for organizations, and AI is accelerating that because we're using AI to speed up development, speed up what we do in our everyday lives. AI is not effective without data, and often that data is my intellectual property, my regulated data, critical data that I need as a worker to do my job function every day. And the proliferance of AI tools, LLMs, AI enhanced solutions and business applications I'm already using today all want to ingest as much data as possible to provide the most valuable output. And as soon as I have my data in a lot of different places, I have a natural security risk. So we already had a problem of the four walls going away when we moved to cloud, and now that change is being accelerated because now it's not only in a cloud or my sanctioned application, sanctioned cloud, so to speak. It can exist, live, and be ingested into so many different places, often not maliciously by users. And I think that's an important piece. I don't know, Aaron, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I completely agree. I would say maybe two thoughts based on what we've talked about so far. I have found it maybe kind of just a funny way to kick off some of the presentations I've given over the last 6 to 8 months, and by saying things like, show of hands, who all's heard of AI, and just to kind of get the crowd going, because it does seem like it's tough to get through any meeting, any conversation these days without that being tossed out there. But it's quickly becomes a not funny topic when you maybe are in a room where you've got some stakeholders that are responsible for things like attack surface. And so in my role, I always like to just kind of start with that question if I'm on site and we've got some time and maybe representation from the network team, maybe some some developers, maybe the chief information security officer is involved, and just ask the question, do we all agree on what our attack surface looks like? And then layer on the question, now that we are using artificial intelligence, do we have the same answer? And just kind of look back up to the whiteboard. And if we've, illustrated some seams, if it's, a network heavy team, a lot of times that might look like, we've got these things exposed to the internet, and layer 4 ports are open, or were in the past, and we think we've got that buttoned up. If it's more of a server sysadmin heavy team, maybe the conversation goes to account permissions, and who's got what permissions, users logging into laptops and things like that. But it feels like there's this kind of undercurrent now with AI where intent is the new perimeter. And I think that that's an interesting concept, and maybe for me at least kind of newer. And I think what's meant by that is being able to take concepts like data loss prevention and matching against content, sensitive character strings like source code and social security numbers and credit card numbers and things like that, but take that further into what was the intent of, requesting those things or uploading those things, and whether that was initiated by a user and in what direction, meaning an internal employee sending it outbound, or maybe a customer requesting access to a web page. I think
let's dive into that for a second. When you say intent,
I'm getting too far ahead. Sorry, I get carried away.
No, it's okay. Let's when you think about intent, though, I think about how I think about roles. Like, right, different roles have different intent, right? And you think about, Bill, you mentioned about the consumption of data. So AI, I mean, in my head, I think of AI as a data consumer. Like they are ingesting tons of data. Aaron, you're talking about now, I mean, there's the point of the AI becoming a decision maker, right? They're actually making decisions. And then the other role is, when do they become the actor in all of this? And I'm just wondering, at what point, like in each of these, there's different security concerns, right? If they're only doing data consumption, if they're only making this decision versus their the puppeteer or the puppet master, so to speak. Is that, I guess, where do you think teams currently overestimate that security risk in those different roles?
I'd actually argue it might be more underestimating the security risk than overestimating the security risk. I mean, that's the reality, and I think you're hitting on some important points, Nick, and we keep pulling the thread and it gets deeper. So I think, speaking to intent specifically, I mean, I love that conversation, right? We've been talking about, intent-based networking and data centers and automation, and it was still, I think a vision that many organizations did not fully realize, due to complexity challenges. I think we're entering this age where AI is going to make that much more actionable, which starts to lead into the last part you were bringing of, I think we get into agentic AI and AI making decisions in our environments, which is absolutely a good thing, which is absolutely a risky thing. And so, not to circle all the way back around, but I think many organizations, and this is something we talk about with our AI development partners and AI security partners often, it seems to be a common underrepresented thread, is understanding the intent of users and how they want to use AI. It usually starts with, we're going to block all AI, but we have Copilot, so we're secure because it's our own tenant. Okay, already a misnomer. We even talked about this on previous podcasts, but take AI. Organizations undergoing AI initiatives have to spend, in our opinion, a tremendous amount of time understanding how their users want to, could, and should use AI to do their jobs, their tasks, accelerate their efficiency, and achieve all those things. But it's definitely a job of IT as a whole, and I say IT as a whole because that intentionally requires everything from sysadmins to network to infosec to regulatory compliance and governance, to really understand how their organization, how their users need to work and want to work with AI, so they can even start to get their head around what kind of security controls, systems, tools do we need to put in place to safely enable that? Because if we don't, that's the quickest way to shadow AI use in an organization. And no matter how much blocking and prevention we try to do as an organization, this has happened in IT for decades. Shadow IT and shadow AI is definitely think users will find a way to work around tools and systems if it means getting their job done faster. So I think it's really incumbent on the IT teams to take a step back and think about business process, think about people, and think about use of these tools before they even start trying to put in, controls and governance and regulators on the systems and the applications.
So I'll ask both of you this question then. So what would each of you personally require before signing off on AI access and production? Because to your point, like banning AI, banning AI. Some people may want to ban IT. Banning AI isn't obviously. I mean, that's not going to work. So really, it's like, what is the, and again, just a scenario, like what would you guys require before saying, hey, AI is acceptable in production for my business?
Yeah, I'll jump in with some thoughts there. So, I think it is important to acknowledge what Bill mentioned, which is that I think this whole space to me creates more of a three-dimensional problem to attack surface. And in order to address it effectively, it's just as much of a kind of a people and process and policy update training, I would say, as anything else. And so, in my world, in my mind, my brain kind of goes to, inline AI visibility. You can't, put guardrails around, what you're not seeing. So, shadow AI, corresponding guardrails, and then kind of, maybe out of band SPM type stuff in terms of technologies that need to be in place, at least for kind of user initiated outbound flows. After that, I think it kind of depends on where the gems are and what the organization needs to protect. But once those types of tools are updated to be able to be more effective around intent, in addition to kind of legacy DLP CASB type stuff, I completely agree. All paths reconverge at going back to training and making sure that everybody understands how to use these tools, what the risk is. Just because you use ChatGPT at home doesn't mean you can come in and use those same tools. Here's why. I feel like we're still very much in a 101 stage of that conversation.
Yeah, I think, Nick, something we've been talking about with our customers for many of our clients that know, and I think we've talked about on some previous pods, is this concept of, we had kind of a co-pilot readiness assessment, and it was really focused as much on cybersecurity. But again, we took this very people and process centric approach before having that. So I think a best practice, kind of a first step, organizations need to have kind of some form of an AI governance board. And when I say governance, I don't necessarily mean it in the traditional GRC term of governance, but more around an effective working group. And Structured has created this internally, and it's a multi-team, multidiscipline, multi-domain representation of people coming together to understand how AI use is going to affect even our organization. And of course, that translates very well to our customers. But speaking specifically to our customers, there needs to be representation from governance and compliance, representation from traditional IT teams, representation from frontline business leaders, executive management. I think all those pieces have to come together, and you kind of have this internal regulatory working board that has, starts with the vision. What do we want to accomplish? You start assigning tasks and roles out. Yes, we have to go update all of our acceptable use policies and do that to encompass AI. We need to work with cybersecurity to put in the right protections, tools, and prevention and blocking that we can to maybe allow only sanctioned AI. We need to have those frontline leaders that are going and gathering the business requirements from their team. And again, just like any other board, all that information feeds back up, so you can start to make intelligent, policy, procedure, and use case plans for your organization as you continue to roll out and use AI tools. Because just like everything else in technology, that's the other thing, is that I think extension of AI to enhance the tools and enterprise applications that organizations are using are only adding and further integrating AI every day. We're only going to see more. So by kind of getting this semblance of a framework together and a plan, then kind of there's a really good structure to say, okay, team X now wants to purchase this tool. It's almost like start running through the checklist. Does it have an AI extension? Does it not? If so, then we have to start going down these checks, these balances. We are seeing, I think just a real world example we're seeing is that because of this, there is a lot more scrutiny on things like end user license agreements, BAAs, data processing agreements that are happening when our clients consume the technology that we're offering. We're seeing that contract negotiation piece go through a lot more detail and a lot more scrutiny due to that reason, that it's not just checking a box and clicking through a EULA anymore. The organization's legal teams and data security and data processing teams are being much more involved in diving deep into those and understanding the even the security posture of our vendor partners that we're going to market with, and how they're handling data and how they're handling governance of their data, et cetera.
Let's jump into you mentioned earlier about agentic AI, and we've talked a little bit in the past about agents. I want to go a little bit deeper, and specifically, you guys both deal with clients, real world clients every day, and when you think about it, a lot of what AI has been entrusted with now are things that humans, we wouldn't trust an employee to necessarily even do without pretty good oversight. So I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, if you're talking to a client, what worries you guys more, a compromised agent, so like a security breach, or an overtrusted agent that has too much authority? Like, which one of those, when you're having these conversations in the room and whiteboarding, like, what do you guys talk about with the clients?
Yeah, I'll just share some initial thoughts. So I feel like a good question to start with that scenario is, if either one of those situations were to arise, how would we know? Kind of A, right? That, I think that's a good starting point to then kind of roundtable some thoughts on what measures can we put in place if we wouldn't know, and then maybe to double click on that, how would we differentiate between those two scenarios? And so I think the second one is equally risky, if not more so. And maybe I think that just because it feels more likely as it sits today, certainly not that an agent couldn't be compromised, but just this whole concept of an AI agent kind of becoming a data consumer, just that, what we were always used to in the past with user to data problems and kind of permission sprawl. Well, all of a sudden, if you've got user to AI agent to data, that kind of turns into what's called an entitlement explosion, where, if the agent needs read-only access to all of SharePoint, well, now all of a sudden, everybody who can prompt that agent has read-only access to all of SharePoint. So that problem is, I would say, a lot bigger, just even on the data consumer side. And then once that agent becomes, or gains the ability to read, write, and become a decision maker, I think the ability for what's called traceable reasoning or kind of chain of thought logging, just being able to kind of step back through, maybe this agent had a task that was delegated from another agent, what was the decision, why, and who delegated it. And so that, when you think about that, it feels to me like you'd almost need a third agent to just keep up with any of that. And so
you need an agent babysitter, a babysitter
right?
agent to babysit the other agent that might be overtrusted.
Exactly. A lot of there's certainly a lot of value, I think, in having a human in the loop, but at some point you're going to need to almost increase your staff just to make that realistic. And that, I think, to some extent, depending on the use case and environment, defeats the purpose. So I think that's kind of the tightrope that a lot of organizations are starting to walk.
So how does, I guess maybe just keep expanding on that. Like, you guys are saying the compromised agent really that's not as much of a fear. The overtrusted agent, obviously higher risk, but where does, and what solutions can be put in place to safeguard that, like to make sure that like this doesn't happen? right now I'm just thinking about that old movie from the 80s. Was it War, whatever, the war with the kid that like war games or whatever, the kid that designed the game.
Yeah.
I was like, like
Do you want to play a game?
you want to play a game? Like, yeah, it's like I almost feel like that's the scenario. It's like, well, now this agent has figured out something. What do you guys recommend putting in place? I mean, obviously you can't just have a bunch of more staff. So what software, what tools, what processes should be thought about at least to be able to have those to stop that movement?
Yeah, I think the terminology that I've heard thrown around, and I think that, you know, different vendors are certainly at a different journey on some of this stuff, but I feel like we need to get to the point where we've got task specific scoping. So zero standing privileges is another term I've heard thrown around, which is kind of, I would say, an extension of just in time or JIT access, where there's a cryptographic token issued or granted for just in time. So just before an agent is given the ability to execute a task, and it also will be revoked. So dynamic revocation right after the task completes. Again, that's kind of why I think I jumped ahead a little bit on my thought there previously, that you would need almost a third agent to, you know, make sure that those things are occurring. But we've got to get to the point where we're aligning with how, you know, ephemeral, I would say, the identity and access management world should be, where part of this stuff, when we talk about it, reminds me of, I'll just jump back to late 90s. I was in a university environment where I would manage tools like What's Up Gold and SolarWinds, and we would create a service account, and that service account would just live indefinitely. You know, some of those concepts are similar, but this world of, you know, where an AI agent, you know, could be the smartest person that you've ever met, and then some. But it's not only that; it scales like software. You know, obviously the concept of a corresponding service account that's got a username and password that lives for days, weeks, months, or years. Just that can't be the answer. You know, nor can we arm a piece of software, at least, with the ability to leverage, you know, external interactions and FIDO2 capable, you know, multi-factor authentication. You know, maybe we'll get there eventually with robots down the road. But in the absence of that, I think that we've got to come up with, you know, a different approach there.
So how does Cloudflare play into this? Like, where did they sit in this ecosystem of technology?
Yeah, and don't hesitate to jump in, either of you, if I get verbose to a fault here. But part of the reason I patiently waited for a position at Cloudflare, so 2 years after COVID started, it's kind of a long answer as to kind of what motivated me to start looking around there. The technical reason was I was reminded daily that you can't hide from latency, and I'll just leave it at that. But that motivated me to kind of see what else was going on out there. And Cloudflare really stood out to me, partially because of the global Anycast infrastructure that they had built. And in this context, I would say that Cloudflare is uniquely positioned as the global, you know, true middle mile. And the reason that matters is if you genuinely want to be able to safely enable AI in all directions, that's just going to be very difficult, I think, for a lot of vendors to pull off. If you've got a focus on outbound, you know, employee user initiated flows, you know, maybe there are plenty of good, you know, SASE and SSE point solutions out there. Maybe they'll add some enhancements to their, you know, SWIG, ZTNA, DLP, CASB stuff, and I think that will be a good piece of the puzzle. But I'm thankful to say, and again, I know I'm self-aware enough to know I'm drinking a certain flavor of orange Kool-Aid here, but to me, to own all of the inbound traffic as well in that context matters a lot. So, you know, owning a global Anycast DNS infrastructure and being able to scrub traffic at our Anycast edge that may be destined for a customer's AI-enabled chatbot, and be able to, you know, again, not only apply DLP controls like, you know, is there source code or credit card numbers or SSNs that are trying to be uploaded or downloaded, but what was the intent of it? Is the end user or potentially a compromised agent requesting those things? What's the underlying intent? So being able to sit in the middle and offer legitimate kind of guardrails and visibility for both of those flows. So outbound user initiated for employees, maybe inbound, whoever across the internet trying to access a web front end property. And then also, look further into east-west flows. So, MCP is kind of a newer concept, at least to me, model context protocol, but being able to add the concept of a sort of a universal translator between users and LLMs into whatever resources they're trying to access, databases, file servers, SaaS apps, whatever. Being able to add more than authentication to that is, I think, an important piece of the puzzle. And then last, and then I promise I'll stop stealing the mic here, Bill, but having some sort of east-west visibility and control over the access to the models themselves. So if there's a web front end, wherever that's sitting, on-prem, AWS, Azure, GCP, Cloudflare, and then that component is trying to leverage a model or multiple models, having the concept of what Cloudflare is calling an AI gateway, to be able to sit in the middle there and provide not only similar, maybe DLP related guardrails, but also, Nick, you mentioned earlier, cost concerns. If I can't dictate who's going to ask what, then all of a sudden the LLM provider is charging me that, having some sort of visibility and control over that. And then just uptime on the service, rate limiting. There's no reason that these tools can't undergo a volumetric attack. So having rate limiting for just generic DDoS related concerns as well. I would say that's a long-winded way of saying that, acting as the true middle mile of the internet, I think positions Cloudflare well for all four of those critical scenarios.
So I have to ask, and I'm sure Bill will chime in here too, but so in that function, I guess, when you think about accountability then in security, you've talked applications, we've talked about all these things, but let's just say if AI behaves badly and and something happens, where does the accountability lie? Is the accountability in the software? Is the accountability in the setup from the customer? Is the accountability in the service provider that's helping manage it? Where does that line go? Because now, to your point, you have all these people in the middle of it. So where do we get lost in a bit of who's at fault here?
The easy answer is yes to all of those. I got a smart guy like Aaron here. I'll stay with that answer. No, I think that at the end of the day, I think that the unfortunate answer is that it is the responsibility is going to lie on IT departments and cybersecurity teams at the end of the day, because we are the ones that are putting in the tools and the systems to try to control, regulate, and do this. And that is where the ultimate responsibility lies. And I think that's why we're having this exact conversation, is what are the different areas you need to think about. And even just stepping back one thread, what Aaron has said is perfect, because it fits into everything we've been talking about. We have to treat agentic AI with an even tighter set of identity and access controls, or as tighter than we are humans today. At the end of the day, humans, there's malicious, which is this percentage. There's non-malicious, which is a much larger percentage. Often an AI making decisions, maybe has some degree of a moral compass, but different than a human's. And so if that AI agent can take actions, having an additional set of identity controls, the dynamic revocation of access, the logging, and the ability, whether it's another AI watcher and or a human, to be able to have accountability and review of actions it's taking or may take, is important. And I don't think we want to sit here and pretend that all of these tools exist, right? This space is rapidly evolving and emerging. So we're gonna have to continue to watch in the market and see how the tool sets evolve and see how the controls evolve. But these are definitely the things that you need to be thinking of. And right, the problems in cybersecurity haven't changed for a long time. You can't secure what you can't see. And I think that's why it's important what Aaron mentioned, is that kind of global visibility and their entry point on the network is so critical, because with AI, our attack surfaces were already out of control. And this is only opening up new attack surfaces for organizations, for bad actors that they might be exposing themselves to. AI is compounding that problem. So as with anything security has been for years, I have to have visibility to even start to put controls in. So I've got, the authentication and access of AI, of agents. I've got the data element. Where is my data? Who has access to it? Who should have it? And then I have to have that ongoing visibility and the ability to put controls in to try and block it. So I don't think I didn't answer the question directly, but I think
No, that's right.
these are the foundational and fundamental pieces that every IT organization needs to be thinking about, because at the end of the day, right, it's going to be the CISO, the CIO, the directors of those groups who are going to have to take accountability, or will take accountability from the business if something happens. And quite frankly, whether that's right or wrong, it probably doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
But that, I think, is where the accountability is going to lie. If an agent goes rogue, if an AI tool does something, or if data is exposed to somebody that it shouldn't be, that the responsibility and accountability is going to fall back to us as IT leaders.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken, that at the end of the day, you have to, it's why it's so important to do the planning ahead of time, so you're not reacting, you're actually responding to something. So let's dive into, you guys were mentioning, you're out with customers recently, so let's get the field perspective and talk about the customers you're talking with right now. What are table stakes in this space, and what's genuinely just aspirational, like, hey, I would love to have it, but like not gonna happen right away? Like, what are you telling them right now, as we go into a new year? What are table stakes they've got to do?
I think the table stakes today, that I think often with what even our clients have kind of in their toolbox today, is to start to do some fundamental AI tool rationalization and blocking of non-sanctioned apps. That's kind of I think, easy-ish, low-hanging fruit. Is I have to get my head around, as an IT leader, what AI tools is my team using. Again, speak to visibility, and make some conscious decisions on, okay, can we focus this down? Can we narrow this down? Do we need to be using Copilot and ChatGPT and Gemini and this and that and XYZ as an organization? So can we do some tool rationalization, provide people maybe an enterprise tenant, a controlled tenant that can get a good, maybe hit a 85% workload problem, and then you start to address the outliers, and then just look at some fundamental blocking at your current security perimeter of non-sanctioned apps. Thinking back to the days of the Dropboxes and cloud
Yeah.
file storage systems, right? It's how do we give users a tool that's secure and sanctioned, and that is truly, like, I'd call it step one. And because all these other topics that we've kind of been talking about are really that next layer. What data is going to it, who's accessing it, these kinds of things. How do I get visibility in line to understand what prompts are being set, so that I can maybe even dynamically block those prompts because they're asking for something they shouldn't be, whether it's a human or an agentic AI. And I would just say, based on our conversations, I feel like we still have many clients who really haven't even gone to that level, or they've gone to the over-rotated level of, we don't know what to do, so we're just blocking all AI, which then spawns the shadow AI problem and shadow AI problem, and people find ways to work around it. So I think that's a very fundamental step that many, and to be fair, many of our organizations, many of our clients have, and many organizations out there have done that. But we still run into those that, are kind of at step 1A still. That is a pretty important step in our opinion.
Yeah, I think I would just to add to that. I think all paths reconverge. I know we're kind of repeating this topic, but I think it's so important just to ask the question, revisit the topic. What does our attack surface look like? I think that there's a reason that a chief AI officer position is a thing now, right? And I think that will only be more interesting moving forward. And to me, part of the reason that is important to kind of just come back to in the context of this question is, if we add questions into the topic of, what do we all agree what our attack surface looks like? And then once we agree on that, who owns the outcome? Adding in newer concepts like, if a developer stood up an MCP server today, would we know? What does that mean if we don't know? What does it mean if we do know? What do we do about it? Same things for topics like auto rag. There's just a lot of potential ramifications of, even if we do know that those components are out there, much less if we don't. And so I would say, kind of coming back to the question and maybe a more specific answer, I would say, to me, what I look for and what are table stakes these days is whether it's an enhancement to existing technologies like WAF, Gateway, CASB, DLP, or new technologies. They should, at a minimum, I would say, be able to be aware of direct injection strings, meaning phrases like ignore previous instructions. I would say that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. So, if phase one is more kind of shadow AI for inbound and outbound, phase two would be guardrails that are, in addition to knowing what my sensitive character strings are, again, adding more of that intent capability to include things like ignore previous instructions. Now, to be clear, that's not going to be good enough. It's probably not good enough already. And interestingly enough, that not good enough already, I think, reminds me a lot of how this is top of mind, a little bit of a tangent, but I've got two daughters that are in high school and college. And over the last, I would say 6 to 8 years of my career, URL filtering, proxy avoidance, like circumvention techniques, like translation attacks, right? They're just, all that stuff is so relevant again. And it, it's not a surprise, but being able to ask the same prompt, but in French, that's a problem. There's a lot of just easy techniques like that, even before you get to concepts like token smuggling and some of the more advanced stages that we're going to need to be aware of in the not so distant future, that I think are just, again, just good questions, a bulleted list to kind of step back through and make sure everybody's on the same page. And of course, some organizations are further down the path and some haven't even really thought through some of those topics. So
it makes me think, Bill, you've mentioned this a couple of times around shadow AI, shadow IT, when you first hear the terminology, you actually, I think, you're bad actors, you think this, but in reality, it really can be people with our own organizations, right? It's not probably not malicious intent, but that shadow work could actually be as detrimental as a bad actor, because they could be opening up, exposing something, doing something, right? I mean, that's just it seems like you automatically assume it's not somebody in your company.
I mean, even though the 1% is large, it really is 99%, non-malicious or some very high percentage, right? My son may or may not have used proxy avoidance to get a project done at school because the URL blocking was blocking the legitimate site he needed to go research to get his final paper done his senior year. And he could not get to the site he needed to, and he's like, "Oh, I know how to do this," and got around the school's proxy in about 7 seconds. And that's not even my tech whiz kid; that was my sports kid, and he knew how to do it. So it's a very real thing. And I heard, I don't know how I missed this story, or maybe I heard about it, didn't process it, but we were talking, I can't remember, it was a client or a partner recently, and it was one of the major LLMs. I won't even say the name of it because I'm not sure, and I don't want to. I'll protect the innocent LLM for now. But some bad actors went in and basically said, "Here's a set of tools." Gave the agents a bunch of pen testing tools and told it that they were hired by these 30 firms to go pen test these companies. And I think they succeeded in 5 of 30. And the AI successfully exfilled passwords and/or data from 5 of the 30 companies they attacked. Now, wow. I've been told that vulnerability has been fixed in that model, but this also wasn't some bootleg foreign Russian LLM that was stood up. This is like one of the big 5 LLMs that exists out there, and actively hacked over 30 companies just based on somebody asking and saying, "Here you go. Here's my website. I'm a cybersecurity firm. Here's the tools you need. See if you can go breach these companies."
That's crazy.
Kind of a fun story as we wind down. A fun, scary story.
That's a fun,
Almost
scary
Skynet.
Story.
Almost Skynet.
Almost Skynet. Let's go into the final the bonus round. This is the lightning round, Aaron. So as Bill knows, this is I can hit you with some questions, basically 5 or 6 questions. Answer quick, and this is just to help. You should have an opinion. Like these are questions you should have an opinion about, and then we'll go from there. All right, most overhyped AI security concern today.
I'll start. I would say the fear of AI-enabled kind of super malware creating entirely new, unstoppable attack methods. I think I grew up on like Terminator 2, and so I think my brain goes to that as like the the biggest concern, and perhaps eventually it will be. But I think we've just got so much more to worry about between now and then.
That's a great one. I can't follow that up.
You can't follow Terminator.
No, because I would mostly because I completely agree with it.
All right, let's go to what is the most underappreciated risk with AI right now?
I've got one, but I'll let you go first, Bill, if you've got one.
No, you fire it. See, this. I know how to surround myself with smart people.
I feel the same way. This is a ton of fun. To me, this one is indirect prompt injection. This is one that I think is just happening around the clock and we don't even realize it. And so the example that I think resonates with most is if let's say I am interacting with a recruiter and I say, please review this individual's LinkedIn profile. And in the LinkedIn profile, in the about section, I've created some white on white text, meaning the text is white, the background is white. So none of us would see it unless we, scrolled over the text, but the LLM will read it. And in that white on white text, it's got what would previously have been a direct prompt injection of the wording that I mentioned before of, ignore instructions, things like that. That is happening left and right. And it is really, really hard. If you're not all in already on like a shadow AI tool set as part of your, SSE SASE solution where you can dictate who's accessing what tools and what sites and be able to populate swig style, rules to be able to even know that that's happening, that is a giant blind spot for most organizations.
That is a great one. And I would say, Nick, I will. It's one I've used on some previous pods and talked about, but I think it's important just in the context of this one is simply procuring an enterprise LLM tenant makes you secure.
Okay.
It is a tremendous first step. But Aaron mentioned it earlier. It is the fear, the risk, and the concern of, again, making non-public or privileged data searchable by a wide number of users in my organization is a very, very real concern. And again, this may not be, I'm not worried about Steve down the road stealing, the source code. It's probably not that, but it's was it the salary and bonus list? Was it an internal HR communication because HR needed to upload some stuff to do something, and just being able to search that and say, show me all topics regarding this, or show me that, if that data is out there, your enterprise LLM tenant will find it if it has access to it. And because of the proliferation of I think the personal use of AI, people are getting very, very, very good at prompting AI, because that's the most important thing to making AI work, is knowing how to prompt and reprompt and modify prompt. And so everybody, a large percentage of people are learning how to manipulate AI prompts really, really well, that I can turn around to use in maybe I won't call it malicious, call it a nefarious way, just to see what's out there in my enterprise.
All right, that's a great one. All right, 2 more in our bonus round. What is the biggest executive misconception? You guys both deal with a lot of businesses, a lot of executives, and I don't mean, it doesn't have to be just CIO, CISO, et cetera. Like, what's the biggest executive misconception right now?
I mean, from my perspective, I think it's just that it's the general feeling that deploying AI is going to significantly increase productivity and efficiency just by deploying it and using it. And I think I'm thinking of this more from I'll cover more of a sales, marketing, branding side. I'll let Aaron answer the technical side, but think of the ability to generate content rapidly is good. It's great. However, AI is frequently wrong, or AI gets it 75% right. There's even, I've had some discussions with some more as we're having kind of more marketing type conversations with folks of it's so easy to detect how the different AIs phrase, format, and formulate things that even to the common reader can start to be like, that looks like it was AI generated. And guess what? Sometimes it wasn't, sometimes it was. But I think when, many of our customers, organizations that are using this from a sales, marketing, branding standpoint, it's something organizations have to be conscious of. And that, it's, you're still, you're taking that base content, it's giving you the rough clay shape to mold, and now you're carving the details in the edge of it that fit your company's voice, your company's branding, your company's look and feel. And so, how do you balance that speed and efficiency while keeping your image, your brand, and your voice, or not looking like, we're just pumping and dumping a bunch of AI generated content, and then are people going to subconsciously start to ignore that because it's like, okay, there's another post, or there's another ad that was AI generated.
That's a great point.
Aaron? Yeah, I completely agree. I think maybe a close second would be the belief that AI safety, which should be kind of more centered around things like preventing bias or toxicity, is the same as AI security, which is kind of more what we've been focused on today, preventing exploitation and data theft. That kind of executive C-level misconception that those are one and the same, or confusing those some way, tends to, from what I've observed, lead to sort of a dangerous gap in technical defenses, because it translates downstream into training that's focused on things that aren't as relevant to the environment, potentially, things like that. So
that's a great distinction. Yeah, I think I've talked to a lot of CEOs that they think it's one and the same.
Yep.
All right, last question for our bonus round before we close everything up. What will attackers automate next in this whole AI security realm?
I don't want to steal the thunder.
Jeopardy music.
Yeah, exactly. No, if you got one, Aaron, go for it.
I think this kind of falls in the, for me, I just feel like, I don't know why Terminator 2 stands out in my brain, is like, am I just making this stuff up? But one that I think we will see, and maybe it's already happened and we're just not aware of it, it's not well documented yet, but sort of like autonomous reconnaissance in more of a multi-step exploitation, where agentic AI systems perform like hands-on keyboard type hacking, scanning networks, research vulnerabilities, and adapting payload without human intervention at all. And so I picture, just to put more context around that, one of the jobs that I had before getting into the vendor space was for the Missile Defense Agency, and I would boot up Kali Linux and scan the network within MAP, and then scan what layer 4 ports I found open after those had been enumerated with Metasploit, and exploit those vulnerabilities. Well, it's a scary thought to think that an agentic AI piece of software could boot Kali Linux, and do all of those things without any of us even knowing it, much less, be able to do anything about it. And so I feel like that's probably next, if it's not happening already.
No, I think that's perfect, Aaron. Terrifying, but it speaks a little bit to I think the example I gave of attackers actively using it, and I think you're spot on, because it's the evolution of spear phishing, except now it's being done at rapid scale. And I think it also speaks back great to Aaron, the other point you made of, it's just going to create super malware that's unable to be defeated. No, it's the fact that they don't have to do that, because the recon capability, the customer profile capability that a bunch of AI agents can go build in seconds, identify the right targets, and then start a campaign, whether it's doing phishing, vishing, whatever. I think vishing was technically voice phishing. I don't know what we're calling video phishing is the next one, but a story I heard recently as well from somebody was about, somebody created an entire AI meeting that looked like the executive team, and then shared it with an employee and said, hey, here was the ask, we need to go do this. I mean, that is a sophisticated wire transfer phishing attack, but probably took 15 minutes to generate.
Yeah.
So I absolutely think it's going to be an evolution of sophistication and targeted attacks, and the scale and speed at which the bad actors are going to be able to do that is unprecedented right now.
Yeah. I'll just add one thought to double click on. I always like to end on a positive note. What I just described there was like a red team exercise, the idea of like, a malicious actor, being able to scale their team, his or her team. I come in and I've only got one other person. 5 years ago now I've got, 10 people with me or more because of the scale of this concept of AI agents. I love to combat that with the concept of blue team agents. So like SOC analysts, incident responders that are constantly, near real time ingesting logs and being able to normalize events and do something about, that red team activity. So I think that'll be interesting, and maybe in an isolated environment. And I know we're out of time here, so I'll summarize, but just that idea of in an isolated environment, maybe a sandbox environment, like a true red team, blue team activity where it's just all AI agents with maybe one actual human on both sides of that. I think that's that would be an interesting activity to observe.
Awesome. Well, obviously, I think, if anybody walks away from this conversation, they should understand, obviously, AI security is not a future problem. It's a now problem that needs to be addressed. And if you don't do something, then you're just going to be reacting versus, trying to proactively work on it. So, Aaron, thank you so much. Bill, as always, thank you, Cloudflare, for sponsoring this episode. And you can see us on the next episode of Structured Insights. Thank you so much, guys, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, team.
Appreciate it. Great to have you guys. Thanks.